were in Copenhagen,
Right?
and they took all kinds of pictures of their dreams, and it was a digital situation, and the husband inadvertently erased them all. And so when we were going to Copenhagen a few months later, it gave us very specific.
Are you amazed by the interest in the book?
I am. I actually am excited because I keep hearing from members of the family I haven't spoken with in the last 15 or 20 years, and also with former schoolmates with whom I rode the subway to high school in New York.
Really?
Yeah. People are just popping up out of the woodwork.
What do they tell you? What do they say? Hey, I saw your interview or saw something about you. Do they have remembrances?
Well, they have remembrances. They've seen the book,
Right.
basically. The book has really jogged memories, and many people have emailed me, and they have said, your father took a picture of me with Dick Snyder. Do you have a copy of that?
Ah.
And I say, no, because he didn't save all of those.
Sure, sure.
He saved the major things, the important shots, but in his later years he tossed negatives, I think, somewhat indiscriminately, which is a shame because it would be great to have lots of these kids posing with the players. They're now my age, and
Sure.
if they've lost copies of their prints, it would be great to give them a print.
You knew your dad obviously had these prints, and you knew where they were, but did you get what points did you say, aha, I've got to catalog these and put them into some sense of order and then make them available to the public?
It happened, well, when he died.
Okay.
And after all of the funeral arrangements were made and he was buried, I went back to his apartment in Florida, my mother's apartment and his apartment in Florida, and I rescued them. And they were on the sun porch.
Oh, was that right?
That's right. And they were in shoe boxes. They were filed well. He had his own sense of order. But I knew I had to get them back and get them into sleeves that were non-acid. And they weren't, I didn't categorize them at that time. I just put them into these protective sleeves. But we were sent to London. Stephen was sent to Deutsche Bank in London for a few years, and I had an opportunity to work on them. These were mostly negatives and some vintage prints. And I belonged to a group in Pittsburgh called Mac Users, and I said this has got to be an international group, so I put out an SOS to Mac Users in London, of all places. And their webmaster contacted me, and as my husband said, that Stephen Bennington became the second most important man in my life for 2 years as we sat side by side with 2 computers and 2 scanners, scanned everything. If we had it to do all over again, we might have done it in a much more orderly way, but at least everything had been scanned and saved.
Right.
And it enabled me to then be ready when people called and needed shots either for a museum or for the newspapers. My sister and I copyrighted the collection, and then Dennis D'Agostino called one day after he had seen my website and said, gee, I think there's material for a book here. And I said, well, where were you born, Dennis? And he said, in Brooklyn. And I said, well, then we may have a deal. And so we started working on the book. Fortunately, he had an agent, and his agent sold the idea to Triumph Books in Chicago. And we worked on it for over a year. And it was very interesting because he had asked me to call the Dodgers, the surviving Dodgers, and ask them if we could interview them. And it was very frightening for me because these were very famous people when I was a kid. But they, once I mentioned Barney Stein's name, their memories, their hearts opened up, and they just talked and talked and talked. And we have the interviews in the book. And I think that's what makes it so special. It's not just another history of the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Right.
It's a very personal family type album of memories of the events. We sent them photographs to look at and to comment on, but also the high regard they had for my father.
Yeah.
And that's the most gratifying part of doing the book. It's not the sales, it's not the people getting to know me, but it's the fact that his work has finally been recognized for the greatness it really has.
Now, this is not the first book of which your dad's photos, or a lot of your dad's photos were in. There was one earlier, wasn't there?
No, that was over 50 years ago.
Yeah.
It was the rhubarb patch, which he had done with Red Barber, who had been the commentator for the Brooklyn Dodgers before he was let go.
Yeah.
And then Vince Scully came in, and Vince was very cooperative with the book too. But the rhubarb patch, unfortunately, the plates that were at Simon & Schuster were destroyed, and we couldn't redo the book.
Right.
And I think that's really better, because we had an opportunity to get a new slant on things. And I think this one surpasses the rhubarb patch.
Yeah. As you were calling these players, did you have any where there was a sense of pushback, that they didn't want to really reflect on the old days, or there was a bad experience?
Absolutely not. I mean, I guess the only one who would possibly reflect on a bad experience was Ralph Branca. And, it's been played and overplayed, his 51 loss to the Giants in the pennant playoff. But we didn't talk about that. We weren't interested in that. That's been done.
Right.
We wanted him to talk about the photographs that we gave to him that are in the book and his memories of those times.
As you go through the list, and obviously you had a personal relationship as a young child with the team, I'm just going to kind of mentally go through the lineup and see if you have any anecdotes or reactions. I'll just kind of do a little name recognition or name association, but let's just start with Gil Hodges.
Well, my memory of Gil and Joan is that when I was in Dodgertown at spring training, where I went every February with homework, Gil and Joan came back from their honeymoon, and we were all sitting in the Dodgertown cafeteria, and there was great applause and great hello and slaps on backs, and my father was a very good friend. So that's one of the memories. I remember this cavernous cafeteria where both the executive staff and the players ate. It was an old, I think, a Navy Air Force base before the Dodgers bought it. So it was not a five-star hotel. It was barracks and eating facilities and training facilities. And so that's what I remember about Gil, mostly Gil and Joan, and also her vivacious personality. And I met her recently at a preview of The Ghost of Brooklyn, the HBO special, and she's still the same. She's still Joan Hodges from Brooklyn, and her hair is still red, and she dresses, and she's quite a lady. She's carrying on the tradition.
Now, Gil's name keeps being brought up as a potential Veterans Committee Hall of Fame nominee. Does she talk about that at all?
No, she doesn't. Okay. No. We've never had a chance to talk about that. It's a shame, because it would be wonderful if he got in, but at this point, it doesn't seem likely, does it?
No. Second base, of course, was Jackie Robinson. Let me just put this in a time frame. When's your first real memory of the Dodgers? Without asking your age, Bonnie.
No, my first memory is probably 1945, 1946. I think in 45, perhaps. Leo DeRocher, Bear Mountain, New York, West Point. I was 7, quite frankly, when Robinson came to Vero Beach. And so it was prior to that when Leo was the coach. He was a manager, on and off and on and off, whatever trouble he got into. So my earliest memories, I have even earlier memories, and perhaps it's because of the photographs, but I remember being in Clearwater, Florida, Sarasota, Florida, where the circus was training at that time, and that's where they had spring training. And my father always loved Florida after that, and his great dream was, after he retired, was to move to Florida, and he moved to Sarasota. Mm-hmm. But my real memories are at Bear Mountain, Leo, the cadets coming Saturday night to dance. We had dances at Bear Mountain. John Martin and his wife, the managers of Bear Mountain State Park Inn. And then I guess the most vivid would be 1947 with Rachel and Jackie and that crew at that time. And Ralph Branca and Rex Barney, with whom I was madly in love. The two of them, the R&B boys.
Well, pretty handsome guys.
Right.
But really, 1947, that's the first black, obviously. We know that. From a young child's perspective, did your dad mention it? Was it a notification saying, you're going to see something you haven't seen before, or was it just it happened?
We were not, excuse me, my sister and I were not aware of the big problems. Mm-hmm. I think I was much more aware of the tension that his wife was going through, mm-hmm. what she was dealing with, mm-hmm. and because she would talk to my mother. But I was not that savvy at that time about what truly was going on. It's in retrospect that I realize that we were there at that time. And my father claims to be the first one to have told Jackie that he was on the team. Because he was sent to take pictures of Jackie at spring training. We have pictures of him in his Royals uniform. Mm-hmm. And then he'd say, well, Barney, why are you taking all these pictures? Come on, that's enough. And Barney would usually say, una más, that's his trademark, one more. And then he finally said, well, Jackie, I guess I have to tell you that Branch is going to ask you to be on, Mr. Ricky, is going to ask you to be on the team. So that's basically, between my father's stories and some memories, that's basically my memory.
Why would do you think Rachel would have reached out to your mother? Was she Jewish?
No.
No, your mother.
But yes, my mother was. Yeah. Yes, definitely. But so you have two minorities among I guess there were very few Jews at that time associated with the organization. In fact, my first memories as a young girl are being. I was invited to Jerry Mulvey's house, one of the owners of the Dodgers. And I was sitting in the living room, and in came one of the monsignors, and off his collar would come his collar, and out would come a glass of scotch, and we'd be sitting around with the priests, and this was quite an eye opener from a little kid, for a little kid from Brooklyn, to see other cultures and other religions. So I do remember that.
So it's possible that Rachel would have tried to find somebody who would have gone through something like that.
Yeah, who was not part of the inner circle.
Yeah. Did you sense, even during that whole time period from 1947 through the time that you're exposed to the Brooklyn Dodgers, any sort of that backlash that...
No, in fact, I spoke with Clyde Suckforth's son recently. And he said he never experienced it either, and his father didn't either. Yeah. Oh no, it was Jake Pittler. Jake Pittler's son, not Clyde Suckforth. Yeah. Jake Pittler. We had a long talk, and he said never. And we never did. And I think even to this day, the remaining executives, Buzzy Babese, they never talked down to my father. They spoke very highly of him, and he was part of the team.
Terrific.
Yeah. The spry little guy with the camera. He was about 5 feet tall.
Going around, continuing on around the Jackie Robinson, remembrances of Jackie Robinson. We talked a little bit about that.
Well, he was just a very warm and friendly man. And I have the pictures in the book of me interviewing him for my school paper and taking pictures of him. Very patient. He had a job to do on the field and he did it, but as a one-to-one person, very warm, as was Rachel.
Pee Wee Reese?
Oh, divine, just divine. Very, very warm family type man. Yeah. Duke Snyder was my, love, of course. All the women were in love with Duke Snyder. And they were all just regular guys, It's none of the star power that you have today. They were Brooklyn favorites. Nothing highfalutin, as my mother would say, about them.
Billy Cox?
I don't really remember him. I did see him briefly. I did not know him. I knew Cal Abrams.
Ferrillo?
Not well. Didn't know him well. But it was mostly Rex Barney, Ralph Branca, Duke Snyder, Gil Hodges, and Clem Labine. In fact, I spoke with Clem Labine perhaps a month before he died. Yeah. The coaches. And I remember, who was it? Who was the manager at that time? When DeRocha was fired, Bert Schotten, I think, came in. He had a dog by the name of Bonnie. Mm-hmm. One of those, Chuck Dressen. It was Chuck Dressen, and his wife had a black poodle named Bonnie. And I remember that. But the standouts, the big names were DeRocha, my childhood, and his wife, Lorraine Day, and my father adored, and Branch Rickey.
Let's stop on Branch Rickey. What do you, as a young child, when Branch Rickey walks in the room, how would you describe him? And
he was bigger than life. Yeah. But I was so young at that time, really. But my father adored him, so there was a halo around his head.
Yeah. Did he have a cigar? Did you remember? Is that a question?
I guess he had one, but from photographs, but I don't remember that. Yeah. I remember Anne Branca, Mulvey's, that crew, and the reporters of that time, Dick Young. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You went to spring training
every year?
I guess I started going, I must have gone in 47 the first time, because before that they went to the Dominican Republic and Venezuela, and I did not go. And it was prior to that I went to Bear Mountain. Mm-hmm. But the first time, I believe, I went to Vero Beach was 47. Yeah. And then perhaps for 3 or 4 years until my life changed. I was pursuing my dance career and studying, and I just was not going to go down for 3 weeks and miss classes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, did you attend games during the season? Did you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. If they were after school, I would go, and on weekends we'd hop on the subway. There was no car at that time.
Now, did you go with your dad?
I went with my dad. Yeah.
And that would be pretty early. I mean, I assume he did batting practice and that stuff?
Mm-hmm. Not whole gang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
Now, he was the official photographer paid by the Brooklyn Dodgers.
That's right.
And was there anyone else?
He worked for the New York Post, the Brooklyn Times-Union, the Brooklyn Eagle, but he always had the early shift. He did shipboard news when the Coast Guard cutters used to go out and meet the big steamships and take pictures of all of the movie stars. But as soon as he got off, whether it be at noon or 1 o'clock, he'd either he'd head over to the park or come home, take a quick cat nap, and then go over to the park.
When did games start then?
I don't remember. But, it was a while before there were night games.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I would think, I can't remember because there were, people who worked went to these games.
Yeah.
So
3 or 4 o'clock,
probably.
If you went after school, I imagine.
I went after school, and of course, there were boys who cut school.
Yeah, well.
And to this day, there's a blogger's site. There's a woman who is a Dodger Deb. I don't know. She's been wonderful about talking about the book and about my father's photographs, and she's hoping to do a book someday. But these are people who went to Ebbets Field and climbed in and got in for free or sat in the bleachers, years and years and years ago, and they still remember Barney.
Isn't that great? That's going to make it just feel so good that
It really does.
you're carrying on a legacy here.
Yeah.
If you had to do the book over again, is there something a picture you wish you had included, or an anecdote, or something? When I interview writers, they often have this. I forgot.
It's like The House That Got Away or something.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I think the more I read it over and over, I think we did a very good balance, and there were some photographs that there are photographs of me that I never would have put in, but Dennis thought they should go in.
Sure.
And they've become the most popular.
Mm-hmm.
Really. They show the fashion of the times, which was really non-fashion. But I think we got in the really heartwarming pictures, and especially the pictures that show the end of Ebbets Field.
Mm-hmm.
My husband, who is really not a baseball fan and was not a follower of the team, said it brought tears to his eyes just reading about the end games and the end of the story, the emptiness and the quotes from the players.
Right.
And so I think in general, we did okay. There are lots more pictures. There were over 800 baseball shots, and
You ever think you'd just do kind of a photo album?
I can still do that, but we're lucky to get this book published. The publishing field is not all that great these days.
What did you learn about that process?
I learned that you have to be your own press agent and you have to set up your own book signings. My publisher has sent me to the Yogi Berra Museum in New Jersey. They've sent me to Keyspan Stadium for 57 Day. They've sent me to the Baseball Hall of Fame. I have put together a PowerPoint presentation. I've done talks in communities, at libraries. I'm going to be doing one in Florida for the Society of American Baseball Research in November. But you have to do it yourself.
Right.
So you become your own PR team, and it's an education. So I'm reinventing myself in my old age, from dancer to semi-book writer.
But what an experience. The reality, not many people have a chance to sort of relive their youth and really turn it into a family album and to really talk about the family. Talk to me about your mother, though. We talk about your dad quite a bit, and talk to me about your mother.
Well, my mother was a woman who did not work. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she supported him 100%. She put up with all of his antics. Obviously, he was a wired guy,
Right.
And he was a self-made man. He came from Minsk when he was 6 months old. He lived on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. He shot marbles on the street, never got into trouble. Talked his way into his first job. He worked as a delivery boy for a photo processing house,
Okay.
and one where they sent out somebody to take pictures for certain events. And one day one of the photographers didn't show up, and they said, "Do you know how to take pictures?" And he said, "Sure." They gave him a camera. He learned how to use it. And then they said, "Do you know how to process film?" He said, "Sure." He learned how to do it. He did it. And then, through the grapevine, on the street, he met some newspaper people, and he was able to get his first job in a newspaper. I think that might have been the Brooklyn Eagle, and then the Brooklyn Times-Union when that folded, and through that, then the New York Post. When he went to spring training, he was green the first years, and the other professional photographers. And I think he talks about it in the book. There are I have a lot of his own writings, which I transcribed. And so he talks about how the people were so nice to him so he could learn the ropes. But it's because of him that I got my entree into the Juilliard School of Music, because he took pictures of the American composer Martin Gould's sons, who were baseball fans, and they lived in Brooklyn. And so, my father said, "Well, my daughter's auditioning for Juilliard. Can you write a letter for her?" And so he did.
He did.
I think that a little bit of talent helped too, but it didn't hurt to have a letter from such an important man. So that's sort of the story. He really, he did a lot of advertising work. He really pushed to make a living, because in those days newspaper photographers were not paid that much.
Did he sell, I mean, other than working for the Dodgers, and obviously a lot of his product became advertising or publicity for them, was he able to create an aftermarket for his pictures?
Well, somewhat. That really was at the time, yes, but it wasn't as if he were living today, had been living today, and he had a marketing firm to do all of that. Right. No, he did it for people who wanted a picture. He would send pictures to presidents and get thank you notes. I have all of those letters.
Oh, wonderful.
I have letters from Nelson Rockefeller. I have them from Lyndon Johnson, and lots of. He sent pictures to Queen Elizabeth and got thank you notes. So I think those are much more valuable than having gotten paid. He was good PR for himself, and a good man, and very generous.
As you look through that book, was there a picture or two that said, "That was my dad's favorite"?
Well, I think there's a picture of Jackie Robinson waving. Anything with Jackie was his favorite, but of course there's a picture of Marilyn Monroe at Ebbets Field kicking a soccer ball, and that's got to be one of his favorites. Yeah. He thought she was gorgeous.
Well, he was not alone.
Yeah, right. And so, I look at these and I see Babe Ruth, and there's one of here with Dewey, with all of the Republican bigwigs. There's Walter O'Malley. And another wonderful thing about this is that Walter, his son, Peter, now that sort of Walter O'Malley's name has been softened by this HBO movie, The Ghost of Brooklyn, that it wasn't all his fault. Peter O'Malley has been a big supporter of the book. He's bought about 400 to 600 copies and sent them all over the world. We got a book review from Tokyo, and wondered how that had happened. Well, he sent the book to Tokyo. And I have given him photographs of all the photographs I have of his family members.
Oh, wonderful.
To use on his website. There's one on with my father and Kay O'Malley now on the Walter O'Malley website. So they've been wonderful. They have been, and Terry O'Malley, the daughter of Walter O'Malley, has written to me a number of times expressing how much she really liked him.
What was your dad's sense of 1957?
Oh, it was 57. It was 51 was Doomsday, and then 57. It was tough. Anybody who had their egos massaged because of the team, being close to the team, had to have gone into some depression. Right. But he continued to work. He could have gone to L.A., but he had a job. He had a pension. He had kids in school, so he chose not to go.
Did he cover sports after that?
Not too much. I have some wonderful wrestling shots, but really didn't cover much sports after that.
Did he do boxing? That was always a big...
I don't have, I have wrestling, I don't have boxing.
Yeah, because that was such a big thing at the Garden at the time. And
so it was mostly gory stuff, murders, plane crashes, train disasters, human interest. But sports, nothing could ever replace the Dodgers, and we know that to this day.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's been incredible. Do you find a renewed interest in your own eyes with the Dodgers now?
Well, being so far away from LA, no, but I wish I could get I wish I could get the spirit behind the Mets. You know, I would root for the Mets if I knew the team, but I don't really have that much interest in it. It isn't like it was, and everybody will say that. Although there's a new generation, and the players to get paid what they're getting paid, and to have some of them ignore the kids. But the nice thing is that with the Jamestown Jammers and the Brooklyn Cyclones, the interaction with the families is wonderful.
Yeah.
And if they could only carry that on when they get to the majors, that would be terrific.
Yeah, and we see a lot of that, and that is wonderful because it's really at a people's level. And I get a sense in that time period that the neighbors in Brooklyn knew these players.
They did.
Players knew them, and it was all part of the fabric of
Absolutely.
the community. And clearly that's long gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get in a limo or a car.
I mean, I could go to spring training for some of the teams that are in Florida because we live in Naples, but I don't even go.
Did you ever have an interest in photography?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have the time for it.
Yeah.
I'm, as you know, I'm at the Chautauqua Institution, and I'm very involved with the dance program here, and scholarships for the young dancers who are here. So I don't, and to get that kind of equipment is a major investment, and everything is digital now. And people do ask me, do you think your father would have gone digital? And I say, of course. Yeah. He was the first one on the street with a Rolleiflex, and then he went to the 35 millimeter and had a Nikon. No, he was always interested in new products, so I think that he would have used digital.
I don't recall, I should have, but was there any color photographs in here?
No.
Did he ever take?
He took some color, but not much. I have very little color, and I had 16 millimeter film footage of spring training, which Peter O'Malley has somewhere. We don't know where it is now, but we don't. Color was not the thing during those years, and I'm sort of glad because I think the black and white tells the story much better.
I agree. HBO did a couple of videos, movies on, where they put baseball in color, where they took photographies, home movies basically, and cobbled them all together. Yeah. And there's something new called color.
Yes.
And it just gives you a different flavor for everything. It's like the World War II in color. It's something you just never see.
Right. Now, some of I have printed some of these in sepia, even though sepia really is the color prior to the 40s. And they're sort of nice. We had prints made for my grandson's room, and they're beautiful, beautiful archival, but that's not the way it was. They were black and white, tones of gray, lots of contrast. And of course now we can correct anything when we scan things with Photoshop, which is fortunate because a lot of the negatives are beginning to deteriorate. Right. They're over 50 years old.
Were there shots as you were looking at them and you said, gee, the artistic, the setup, it's more than just being there. One of the benefits of your dad was just, of course, having access.
Well, he also had an incredible eye.
Right.
He knew the game. He knew where the next play was going to be, and he had an incredible sense of composition. Right. But that was natural. Yeah.
Can you describe that, or is that just a sense that you look at it and you know it when you see it? The composition.
You just look at, something like, well, I don't know if you can see this very well, but he also had a good vantage point from the photographer's box. I don't know if you can see that, but it,
yeah, that's great.
And that's not a real action shot, but
But it shows a lot.
It shows that
the kids, the families.
you see their action, you see his grace, and you know where you are because you see the line there,
That's
the
right.
baseline, and I don't know what else.
See, that to me is
This
wonderful.
one, this is, they could have printed this one a little bit better. It's Andy Pafko, I think it's Andy Pafko, yes, catching a ball. In so many of these, you can see the expressions on the faces of the fans.
Yeah.
These are 4x5 negatives from the Speed Graphics, so they had wonderful resolution.
Oh, yeah.
But he, maybe somebody else would have cut out the sign that says featherweight. Well, this was not a featherweight catch,
No,
you know?
absolutely.
So, just had a very good eye. I don't think I have that eye. My husband has a very good eye for photos, but, sometimes you have it and sometimes you haven't. Here's Jackie Robinson. Nice. You got the cluster of the players coming out of the dugout, and there's Jackie and with team captain Pee Wee Reese right behind him. So he knew what was coming, and he had his camera focused, didn't use a light meter, and just knew what the camera's capabilities were.
So this really was off of natural light.
Absolutely, yeah. He did use in later years for this inside, I'm sure this was done with flash. At first he used the flash bulbs that went pop and blistered, and then he used strobe
Right.
in later years. And my mother helped him. Sometimes she carried another strobe pack, and they talked to one another, so they went off at the same time. They had the electric eye.
Yeah.
So, and here's a picture of Barney on the mound. This was the last game at Ebbets Field.
So, he was there when they did the demolition?
Yep.
Did he? Yeah.
Yep, he was there.
Did he write to you? Did he say, do you have any comments there? You're not going to believe this, Bonnie, but this is the saddest day of my life or something like that.
No, he sulked. That's basically it. He sulked. He wasn't a man of many words. His words were spoken through the camera.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think you can see this. They're too small, but here's the destruction of Ebbets Field.
Oh, I can go in there. Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. Oh.
and in the book, the quotes from, I think it's Dick Snyder, they're heartbreaking.
Yeah. As you put this together and the day was done and you said, trying to describe it, I'm sure it's often difficult. What's the legacy of your dad, and perhaps his life through some of this photography? Have you?
Well, the legacy is that he is a man who, came to the United States with a family not even speaking English, who was able to get to a point in his life where he could earn a living and document one of the most famous eras in American sports. I mean, it's just incredible. Yeah. It's an American success story.
You got to be justly proud.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also proud of my co-author, Dennis.
Yes.
Dennis D'Agostino, who really put a lot of heart and work into this. Oh.
This is great.
Well, thank you.
This is fun.
Well, it is. It's been a joy, and it's surreal, that it's taken off as it has.
Yes. What's next?
Oh, please! I have to get through this. I have lots and lots of photographs of famous people, and don't know what I'm going to do. You have to come up with an angle.
Right.
You need an angle.
Right.
And so one has to think about that for a while. But I would love for somebody to write a screenplay about a character based on Barney, with all of the Damon Runyon characters of that era.
Sure.
And I always thought that Mel Brooks would be the perfect guy. But of course, once Hollywood gets a hold of something, they do their own story.
Yeah.
But I think it's got possibilities. Somebody has to write a treatment.
Is there a reading? Is there a Chautauqua reading, kind of using the book with the pictures in the as a PowerPoint? You know, Chautauqua's pretty good at having fun like this, where.
Well, I did a talk here with the PowerPoint.
But I'm thinking about just a variety of different characters. So when you have a Duke Snyder as one person, you have a Jackie Robinson as another person.
Oh, you mean having a dramatic reading?
Not dramatic.
Oh.
That's the term I'm struggling with. So you actually have the photo and you have somebody read.
Well, I'll have you cast it.
Well, they love it around here, Chautauqua. You know, they
Right.
do that during the winter, and I know that like David Zinman
Right.
loves to take that, and that just might
That's a good idea.
fun.
Yeah. Yeah, he did another play reading this year. I missed it. I went to the one last year. But that's a wonderful idea. We'll have to, I know, I saw him the other day, but who knows?
That's right. And we can say we stood right at this table we talked about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just another thing, that the photographs, some of the photographs are at the Museum of the City of New York. The exhibit is called The Glory Days. The Glory Days, New York Baseball, 1947 to 1957. I worked for about a year on that project with them. Not only my photos, there are other photos, but many of Barney's photos are in that exhibit.
His famous photo, and to me that's the most famous, is Branca face down, you know, and on the steps, not in the locker room, on the steps.
On the steps.
I mean, it's such an amazing photo. But that's gotten a lot of press. You see that frequently, and
Yes, it's been used over and over and over, and yeah, it's in another book called The Echoing Green, which is the real story of what happened when Branca pitched to Bobby Thompson and DeRocha was stealing signs. So, and it's been used in, you know, many other books. People are always asking me for permission to use it. So it is probably his defining moment in photography. My father, he won something called the Izzy Kaplan Memorial Award for that photograph in '51 from the Press Photographers Association, which is probably the highest you can get for sports anyway, and it won for Best Sports Photograph of '51. And so it was hard to repeat anything like that.
Oh, it was amazing. And Carl Erskine, of course, has a piece in his book, Tales from the Dodgers Dugout, where he said the best pitch he ever made was the one where he was with Branca warming up while Newcomb was in trouble, and the manager called out to talk to the pitching coach and saying, you know, who's ready? And just as the call was being made, Erskine was throwing one of his classic curveballs that hit the dirt. You know, hit the dirt and went by the catcher. And of course, that's something they couldn't have with men on second, third, is to have a pass ball. So he said, you know, I'll have Newcomb.
That sounds like my first pitch out at the Jammers. I went into the dirt.
Erskine now can smile at it. It's a funny story because of that pitch. He didn't have the opportunity to go in and throw the home run to Thompson.
Yeah, and if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't have had all of this history. If the Brooklyn Dodgers hadn't left Brooklyn, who knows? It might not have had such an astounding place in baseball history, and people would not still be crying.
Well, that's right. And it's nostalgia, and it's really lasted a long time. Has Larry King seen this book?
I sent it to him. I had it personally delivered. I haven't heard from him, though, but maybe he's sorry he didn't write it himself.
He still bleeds Dodger blue.
Yes, he does.
And I saw him on a radio or a television program, actually, MSNG, where he was on the broadcast where they were broadcasting the Brooklyn Cyclone game. So Larry King's there, you know, doing a play-by-play with the two guys, and of course just telling one war story after another And
yeah, I had hoped that he would pick up on this, but he didn't.
Yeah.
No, we sent it to him on his anniversary.
Oh.
So, but you win some, you lose some.
Yeah. Well, you never know.
You never know.
Exactly. Well, Bonnie, thank you.
You were
Thanks for everything you do
welcome.
Chautauqua. I mean, we just have talked about your relationship with your dad, not your amazing career here as a dancer, what you've done to Chautauqua to enhance the programming here. I mean, you're a class act in many ways beyond just being.
I'm beginning to wear out. But I love the place, and I was very fortunate as a young dancer to go to the High School of Performing Arts, which was absolutely free, and then to get a scholarship to the Juilliard School. And so when I see these kids and they come here, they don't have money for pointe shoes, and they have hardly any money whatsoever. They can barely eke out the bus fare to get here or the plane fare. You got to do something for them. They're infinitely more talented than we were in the 1950s.
How do they audition to come here?
There are auditions all around the United States, and they apply and they go to the open auditions. It's like a cattle call, and there are probably 700 or 800 kids that audition for the program, and 70 some odd kids get in.
Now, do you have folks at various locations that actually do the auditions, or the director doesn't see them all, does he?
No, well, you have Mark Diamond and Maris Battaglia, and the faculty, they go around to the different locations. They will audition in Miami at the Miami City Ballet Studios, at the Pittsburgh Ballet Theater Studios, at the School of American Ballet. They go all over the United States. They're given the space by the various companies and major schools. It's a major process, and we are competing against other summer programs that will give 100% scholarships, especially to boys. The boys are the minority,
Right.
and they will pay for their per diem and their airfare, and we can't do all of that yet, but
Right.
we're working toward that. And the Chautauqua Dance Circle is the organization I began with Mimi Edelman about 3 summers ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the first summer we gave a $1,500 scholarship, the second year $2,000, and we're going to probably give unofficially a $6,000 scholarship this year. And it costs, and the institution and Jean-Pierre decide how that will be used.
Right.
We had a wonderful scholarship student, Jordan Leeper from Jamestown this year, who actually not only performed with the Chautauqua school here, the ballet school, but from his own school from Jamestown.
Mm-hmm.
They performed at a family event here week 9, and he was outstanding. He has improved, like 90% from the day he came in, and he really has a future. I think he's only 15, so we hope he'll come back next year. But that's my goal here, to make sure that Jean-Pierre and the program is recognized nationally, that we get more money for scholarship, that people become more aware of the quality of the program. Mm-hmm. It's not just we do dance. No, we do extremely fine dance. And Patricia McBride, Jean-Pierre's wife, was formerly a major star with New York City Ballet. Mm-hmm. And we have Daniel Olbrecht, who is now a principal with New York City Ballet, who is teaching boys class, and he's incredible, and you can see the difference in the training.
How exciting.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. And it's all happening here, Chautauqua County.
And driven by some wonderful people, of which you're the foremost.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a joy to talk about all of these experiences, and I thank you very much.
That's a hoot. I love this stuff.